while ago, I was approached by Klaas Berend on YouTube, and no, I have not forgotten about you, and he said it would be very interesting if you would be able to review all the nibs in the lineup of Italix. Italix is the home brand of mrpen.co.uk, a stationary pen vendor in the UK, and the nice thing is Peter Ford, the owner of that shop, is an excellent nib grinder. So he offers a lot of nib grinds, and I think the Italix range is particularly interesting because the pens are typically pretty affordable and they are high quality, and that doesn't always go hand in hand. So it's a nice combination. Now, I talked to Peter and he said absolutely up for it, but that's a lot of work, and I understand that because you have to grind every nib. Let's say extra fine, fine, medium, broad, easy. Italic, extra fine, fine, medium, broad. Right hand oblique, fine, extra fine, fine, etc. You understand where this is going. Enormous lineup. So we kind of put this to rest for a couple of months, if not about a year. And then suddenly I had this idea where I thought this. How about, instead of doing italic, fine, medium, broad, left foot oblique, fine, medium, broad, right foot oblique, fine, medium, broad, we just take the broad of everything. So Peter agreed, and he sent me this. 10 Churchman's Prescriptors with the full range of nibs. Now, I know, in an ideal world, I would be able to show you the left foot oblique from extra fine through broad, or fine through broad, whatever he offers. But imagine the work in this, okay? So I'm going to show you extra fine, fine, medium, broad, round nibs. Left foot oblique, non-italic, broad. Right foot oblique, non-italic, broad. And I'll explain what all that means when I'm going at it. Left foot and right foot italic, broad. Extra broad italic and extra broad cursive italic. 10 nibs, all right? Let's not waste any more time. Now, I know full well that some of you will be interested in the whole lineup, others will only be interested in one or two. I'll put timestamps in the description of the video below, as well as on the website, so that you know exactly what time to look at if you just want to see an italic broad, or an italic extra broad, or whatever. Okay, let's not waste any more time. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty and do all the writing. Now, what I do say is, I think we should all extend a very kind thank you to Peter, because grinding all these nibs, that's a lot of work. He did all of that, and he sent them to me free of charge so that I can show you this. All right, so that's a pretty substantial investment, I would say. So a very kind thank you to Peter. As always, an absolute pleasure. Let's get started. Okay, let's get started. I have 10 pens next to me. I will have to uncap them every time because I cannot leave them uncapped because I don't want them to dry out. I'm going to talk just a tiny bit about each nib as I write with it. The paper is Rhodia, the ink is Visconti purple for every single pen, and I'm going to try to write in such a way that I don't block your view. Just a little bit about the model. This is the Churchman's Prescriptor. That is one of my favorite Italix models, to be honest. Quite heavy. Used to have a very short section. They made the section a little longer now because you're actually supposed to post the pen and then hold it up here as opposed to holding it at the section. But some people wanted that, etc. The pen does not come with a little piece of Scotch tape and a nib grade labeled on it. I've just done that so I won't get confused. We start with the extra fine, which you may be able to tell, actually the nib is labeled fine. That's because Peter grinds this, all right? So I am not going to post the pens now just to save time. I'm going to grab the section right there. So please refrain from telling me that I'm holding it wrongly. Yes, I know that, but I'm just doing it to make this as efficient as I can. Okay, this is the extra fine. Writing is pretty smooth. And there you have it. Okay, cap this one onto the next one. These are all steel nibs. There is a gold nib option, which I don't have to show you, but it's just you know, a gold nib. Next one is fine. Is indeed a bit wider than the extra fine. also a bit more saturated, I would say. Also quite smooth. If I'm not mistaken, these are 5x5mm grids, so that should give you a little bit of an idea. Okay, the next round nib we have is the medium. I think now you definitely get a more saturated writing experience. Very nice. Now you know that I typically prefer broad nibs, so I'm probably biased. Here's the broad. What I will say is this is an exceptionally smooth broad, so really, really nice. I really enjoy using this this nib on this pen. Very, very pleasant and smooth writing experience. I really love this. Okay, we move on to an oblique nib. Now, I'm just for those of you who are not so familiar with these types of nibs, you don't see them that often anymore. Not every company offers them. An oblique nib, and this is another one, but this is the Italic version. I just want to show you because I think this will really give you an idea. As you can see, hopefully, an oblique nib is cut at a slanted angle. So this nib, left oblique, is actually cut like that. All right? Why would you want that? Why would you use that? So that's a left foot, and then there is also a right foot oblique, which is cut the other way around, right? Why would you want that? Well, many people write with a pen like this, but some people rotate the nib into the paper that way or the other way. When you do that, an oblique nib can really be beneficial because there's more contact between the tipping of the nib and the paper, which actually typically makes it more pleasant to write with for people. Now, these are offered in at least fine, medium, and broad. Maybe there's an extra fine, I forgot that, I'm sorry. But as I said, for these nibs, I only have the broad variant to show you. But the broad variant will also maximize any possible line variation, etc. So I think it is fair to work with this. I'm going to rotate the paper a little bit. Now, I'm not exactly an expert with obliques, but so here we have a left foot non-italic oblique, okay? In broad, I should probably add that. As you can see, nice bit of line variation. For the round nibs, of course, they're round, they're not stubs or anything, so there is not a lot of line variation. An oblique can offer some nice line variation, which is quite nice. Now we move on to the right oblique. I'm just making sure I have the, yes, non-italic. So this is cut the other way. Here, the grind, let me just make sure that I'm saying this correctly. Yes, here the grind is in such a way, where the other one, the obliqueness, was in that direction. This is something that some left-handed writers prefer. I am not left-handed, so I cannot really show this. My handwriting is horrid when I write with my left hand. So I have to rotate the nib the other way. Just now I did this for the left foot, now I'm doing this. So here we have, there we go, the right foot non-italic oblique broad. And I love this nib. I thought it would be difficult for me to use, but I love it. It's very smooth. As you can see, really quite broad. And just a joy to use. So an exceptionally nicely ground nib that I really, really enjoy. Oh, and maybe you want to see the line variation. That was not entirely fair, but there we go. So we have that. Okay, let me see where I was. Okay, yes. Now we move on to yet another set of obliques, but here we have the Italic variant. So these are supposed to really give you some extra line variation. My elbow is resting on the pen. Okay, a left foot italic oblique broad. And here the line variation is, let me see if I can maximize that, is really quite pronounced. That means the nib becomes a little bit less forgiving as to angle. You really need to make sure you align this properly to the paper, but the reward is a very nice line variation. And that is really quite nice, I think. Now the same principle, but right foot, see how did I do this again? Right foot italic oblique broad. This may be one of my favorite nibs in this set. Extremely pronounced line variation, very smooth writer, and just overall lovely. Very, very pleasant. Okay, we're down to pen 9 of 10. This is the extra broad italic. So there is a broad italic, which I've used with I always found there's a lot of fun in italics, but this is the extra broad. So here we have an extra broad italic. An italic is, again, for those of you who are not so familiar with these terms, basically a flat cut, so a very flat grind that maximizes line variation. That means that the corners of this grind are very crisp as opposed to slightly rounded off. The plus side to this is you get a lot of line variation. The downside is for cursive writing, this is not always optimal. Now I found this to work pretty well with cursive actually. If you do a lot of cursive, you may want to consider getting the extra broad cursive nib, which also has a lot of line variation, but the corners are a bit more rounded off, so you won't get snagged in the paper so easily. Okay, let's look at this one. As I said, I found it to be quite usable for cursive writing. Also not very forgiving as to nib angle, right? Because you see there it starts to skip because on purpose I misaligned it. But what you get here is a pen that will really give you a maximum in line variation, which can be very cool. And of course, this is also a nib type that you can use for not full page, but definitely for calligraphy. What I mean by full page is it's not a giant nib, but you can. It's definitely sharp enough to do formal calligraphy, which is kind of nice. And then the final nib is the extra broad cursive. So maybe it would help if I would show you the two side by side. So that was the order in which I showed them to you. On the left you have the cursive, and next to it the cursive italic. So the corners, yeah, it's hard to see, but the corners in this nib are just slightly more rounded off, making for just that tiny bit of increased smoothness. But you'll pay the price for a little bit less of a wide line. But as you can see here, for cursive, that is preferred because it's much smoother. You don't have to deal with that corner of the nib cutting into the paper. And that is worth something too. And you still get a nice amount of line variation, but just not as crisply as you would get for the full italic. Okay, that was 10 pens. I tried to make this as efficient as possible so that I wouldn't waste your time. I hope this was useful. Again, a very kind thank you to Peter Ford for sending me all these pens. There will be, of course, a high-resolution shot of the writing sample on the website with an explanation of all the codes, because I realized that RFIOB is actually pretty cryptic. I hope this was useful. Let me know if this was helpful to you, and I'll gladly see you later. Bye bye.
Bye.